for tuning in to Turn to the Stars. My name is Andrea Klim, and I'm an astrological counselor and a shamanic practitioner from the local Manchester area. And today, the topic of the show is hearing voices. And I have a guest, Wendy Fletcher, who has been here in the past. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you.
And Wendy is a spirit channeler and a hands-on healing therapist. And we've been talking about this topic for a little while, and a lot because of energetically what's happening around us and the experiences that we're seeing in the news, hearing voices. And one of the inspirations energetically is that, today is October 15th, and this Friday, which is October 18th, there is a penumbral lunar eclipse occurring, and that is occurring at 25 degrees in the constellation of Aries, and it can be seen here on the East Coast. If you step outside at about 7:45, you'll be able to see this actual process. You'll see the penumbral. It's not a total shadowing of the light that the sun is reflecting on the moon, because the earth is going to be moving right in between there, but it's a partial. It's called a penumbral. And so it'll be a small shadowing, and I do have a picture of that, and we're going to put that on the screen. There it is, and the little arrow is pointing right to that penumbral shadowing that we'll be seeing on Friday night about 7:45. So if you step outside, that'll be really neat to watch. And the energy that is steadily growing this week, so important, that the potential and the tendencies for emotions to run very high, very big, for the voices of the past to speak louder than usual. It's interesting because this is Aries. It is painting a picture. I use these symbols, which are called Sabian symbols. And in talking about hearing voices, astrology is one of the ways that I look to. It's a voice that I look to for guidance. It's one of them. And we're going to talk a lot about hearing voices today. But because this is Aries, it is coming fast and furious. And there's a Sabian symbol which paints a picture. Sabian symbols are ways to provide further insight into each of the degrees of the particular areas of each constellation. And this one happens to be at 25 Aries. And so that Sabian symbol is a picture of a human being, or any being for that matter, with so many gifts, so much potential, that they feel extremely excited and impatient to wait, to experience, and take action and learn about the potential that is within them. Aries is about the self voice. And I would strongly encourage parents and children awareness of the self and the self desires and the self activation, meaning the activities that the self is inspired to act on. So that energy growing this week. Lunar eclipse is a major marker of change in our relationships and how we relate. So in talking about the different voices, this energy is really inspiring the expansiveness. Just like the moon at night is so big, and it, as it gets fuller and fuller, it does inspire those emotional reactions. And Wendy has, some of the reasons that, she is being inspired. I'd love if you could tell our audience about some of those reasons for your inspiration for joining in with me to do the show, so that we can share this information with people.
Well, as you and I were talking, there are so many things in the news about these shooters that have heard voices.
Yes.
And I was remembering the first time that I heard a voice back in '93. And it was the time of Son of Sam was back in the news. He was a serial killer. And I was living in a suburb of Boston, and I was a housewife, and I didn't know anything about any of this stuff really. And I thought he had popped into my head.
Yeah.
And then I was going to hear voices that were telling me to do horrible things. And I was really scared.
Yeah.
Luckily, I had been to a channel, and actually she lived over in Londonderry.
Yeah.
And I called on the phone, and I was crying. I was so upset. And the woman that answered the phone, she said, "Wendy, what's wrong?" And I said, I'm hearing voices. And there was total silence. And then Sherry said, "Wendy, we all hear voices." And I went, "You do? You do?" And so I was, so that calmed me down.
Yeah.
And then the voice was male. It was calm. It was very loving. It wasn't any of the things that you hear about that, it was telling me to do something terrible or whatever. It was really kind and gentle. So that was 20 years ago. There have been a lot of voices, and it's been a journey of figuring out which voice is which, what do they mean,
Yes.
and what do I need to do about it? What how do I listen? How do I do these things? So the reason I was very excited to do this show with you, because if any of you out there hearing voices and you know that
There's a difference.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm not I haven't studied psychology or anything like that. And it's just my personal experiences that if I can share and if they can help you, that's great. That's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it is, I think it's so appropriate time, with the timing of the energy that surrounds us, that for people like right during this week and during this time, to know that if you hear voices from the past, like the voice of your mother in your head, or the voice of relatives, or the voice of a bully that it really impacted you years ago, that's okay. That is okay. That is perfectly normal right now, and these different voices come at different times, and a lot of time we call it our intuition. I call it our intuition, or for people who are very spiritually inclined, we might want to discuss the different types of voices that, Wendy looked up, and we came together and we talked about these different voices, and you can see them on the screen behind me, the higher self voice. They're going to be constantly during the show popping up behind us, but the ego voice is an interesting voice, because the ego, my perception or the way I think about the ego voice is one that serves a purpose. Ego protects us, or it thinks it protects us, but it really truly does. But the ego voice, ego is something that I believe through our life, through our experiences, and especially the traumatic ones, a lot of times walls start to grow around us, and it's our way of protecting ourselves, and that's the ego. The ego serves a purpose. It protects us until we're able to see the light of why this, not so much why, but understand it deeper, on a deeper level, or till we're able to accept it and look at it in a different way. That is so important. So the ego voice, there's the inner voice, a critical voice of loved ones that have passed over, especially now. That's very, very, that energy is very strong within, around us as that full moon eclipse is coming. the voices of angels. I was thinking this morning as I was getting ready to do the show, I had music and I'm going, oh, music is such an angelic voice.
Yes, very true. Very true.
And the personal spirit guide voice for people who have developed their their spiritual connectiveness with their spiritual guidance. There is the people who channel, like Wendy is a spirit channel.
Yes.
So there's that voice is very strong with Wendy. Voices that jump into your head while driving. That's an interesting one, because if you're an empath,
Yes.
Wendy brought this up. If you're an empath, you're caught in a traffic jam and you're suddenly feeling angry, or you're hearing angry voices. It might not be your own.
Yes. Yeah, that actually happened to me. I was driving a lot from around Andover and then driving into Boston. And I'm just minding my own business. And then thoughts that were just terrible, get out of the way, and just angry voices. And I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then what happened is I started realizing that I was picking up other people's thought forms. And then what I realized, I'm going to tune into other thought forms, because it's really a choice. Am I going to pay attention to the angry ones, or am I going to redirect and listen to somebody else? And so I don't know how it happened. I never know how these things really happen, but all of a sudden I started listening to other people's voices around me. Somebody was listening to classical music. Somebody else was looking at the clouds and how pretty they were. And so, as always, I think, oh, I'm a little off here, I'm a little crazy. And then sure enough, we had also talked about synchronicities.
Yeah.
Coincidences that aren't really coincidences. I was in a metaphysical store, and there was some guy, he was in his maybe late 20s, and I just started talking about having driven down and all these voices in my head, and he turned to me and he said, yeah, isn't it amazing how you can hear other people talking? And obviously he was a lot more attuned to it than I was, but now when I'm driving, because I do that stretch a lot, I say, oh, there's somebody really angry. I think I'll just move over. And so if that helps somebody out there, that it's not always your voice. And when that happens, there are a couple things that you can do. We talked about protection, and some people say put a blue bubble around you or a pink bubble around you. Others talk about a pyramid. And then what I figured out once was an atom just going around my whole body, kind of like hula hoops. And then it was constantly moving, so it was constantly changing the energy of that which was around me. So, that's important to do.
Well, one of the things that I, last year when I had that angry, I was hearing an angry voice around me, I heard also, get out of the way of other people's issues. And it really, because twice within a couple of days period, I was almost run over. Once by a car and once by a man in a grocery store. And I was like, what is going on? And I heard, get out of the way of other people's issues. And I just stepped aside and I was fine. I accepted it's not mine.
Yes.
It's not mine.
It's not yours.
And, so in synchronicity, when that was a synchronicity, and one of the other voices that we also hear is the voice of nature.
Yes.
And, that natural, it's so wonderful to hear that voice. And to connect with that. And that's a great channel for, connecting and grounding yourself every day, is hearing the voices of nature.
And it's confirmation too. I know when I was going to be doing something, and I'm like asking, is this really what I need to be doing? And sure enough, 3 crows flew by. And crow is one of my totems, one of my messengers, if you will, of nature that comes by and gives me. Another, if we're talking about messages, when I woke up this morning, I heard, okay, it's time to start getting going now.
Yeah.
And so I looked at the clock. Well, another message for me is to look at the clock and see a number like 7:37. So you can read that number backwards and forwards, no matter which way. So I got that 3 times this morning of, it was 7:37, 8:28, and then it was 9:39.
And what did they mean?
What did they mean? You're on track. Yes.
Yeah.
You're on track.
So
Keep
you kept
going.
having sequences like that.
Yeah, and that I was meant to do this show, and it is important to get this information out.
Yeah.
And then some people get doubles, like 1111 is a very sacred number, and people will see that. And if you get that after listening to that show, they're trying to tell you something.
Yeah, and another voice of,
voice.
That's another voice or another avenue of a voice reaching you of, it's interesting too. This is how do we differentiate these voices? Because as you heard us talk about, Wendy was talking about earlier, and we talked about this in preparation for the show, that she was watching The View.
Yes.
And Whoopi was on there.
Yes.
She's one of the hosts, and something about she was talking, hearing voices. Yeah.
Hearing voices. They were discussing these shooters and how all voices in your head are really bad. And she says, "Wait a minute. When I'm doing characters, those characters, I have them talking in my head, and it's a wonderful tool for me. And I think we ought to say the first time that I ever heard a voice was." I was taking a self-help workshop or whatever, and the lecturer was saying, he started talking about voices in your head, and he said, the one that just said, what voices? And then he went on to explain, well, you've got, these different voices that will say things like, don't do that, who are you? And we've alluded to them that
right.
But just how these little voices drive ourselves. And I think something for people to realize just on a base level is you have those voices that say, you can't wear that today.
Critical voice.
The critical voice, you don't want to do that. Oh, you can't do this TV show. Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
And then it's so important to replace that with, thanks for sharing, and I've done this before, we're going to be fine. Because that ego voice is so scared, oh, Wendy, you're going to make a mistake or whatever.
Right. And truly, we have to think about, so what's the process of differentiating these voices, which is, first thing is awareness that there's a voice speaking to you, and slowing down to hear that voice. The identification of what that voice is. Is it a critical voice? Is it a voice of ego? Is it the voice of an angel? Is it the voice of a guide? Is it the voice from the past of a parent, or something of that sort? Deciding what to do with the voice. Exploring what that voice is. The realization of the voice of... is it a voice that is talking to you about compassion or condemnation? It's interesting because the Pope said that about a month ago on the news. He was talking to his parishioners, and it's Pope Francis, and I just thought, you know what, go. Because he said to all the parishioners that to hear the voice of compassion and express that voice rather than the voice of condemnation. And that's huge. And, there's this process that we should go through. We should really understand, are we an empath? If you're an empath is someone who can, feel things around them and can take them on as their own if they don't understand, I am empathic. I'm going to be affected by my surroundings.
Yes.
I'm an empath. I believe you're an empath.
Yes, and also realize there are degrees.
Right.
Some people are so sensitive to so many things, and they're not making it up. They really aren't.
No, it's real.
It's real.
And, if talking about voices, the people that, we hear in the news that have gone to such degrees to get attention because they don't know what else to do, and they've gone down the wrong road. Maybe there's other things, we want you to know that this show is strictly informational. We're here to provide information that perhaps can help you to know that if you see someone like that, then the best thing would you do to speak to a doctor, or if that's something that you're thinking about. And you know what? If they're not hearing you, talk a little louder. Sometimes this voice is the best voice, So if you're hearing voices of those around you, such as, angry voices, being in a traffic jam, if you're empathic, or if you're feeling that and you're going, I'm not angry, but why am I feeling angry now?
Yes.
That's probably not yours, and just get out of the way of other people's issues.
Right.
Is all that's necessary. If you're not able to sort this out, really, truly, contact your doctor or somebody you trust.
Yes.
That's so, so important. Or if that's somebody you know that is, you see, that is having that experience. We can all help each other, that's for sure. The age of Aquarius, which is the age we're in. Just this morning as I was preparing for the show, I somehow have my daughter's music, my music, all combined on my phone, and I heard this song from the Age of Aquarius, the Age of Aquarius, and there's some of the words in that song are that the Age of Aquarius is the age of mind's true liberation. The mind, it's true liberation. So we're sorting things out. We are truly, during this time, as we step into this energy, sorting things out the voices.
Yeah, and besides that protection that you can put on yourself, another thing is to ask.
Yeah.
And I was taught, ask, are you of the light? If you feel this energy around you, are you of the light? Are you of the highest vibrational frequency? And somehow they have to say if they are or not, and then you can just say, thanks for stopping by, and
but for
I need you to leave now.
Yeah, for somebody though that is not that in tune.
Right, I'm talking
that. Yeah, right. That would be important to know, to have the education.
Yes.
Right? And I know that you brought some resources that you would like to share.
Yes.
And I think
just one more thing, though,
yeah.
Because sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I can hear these voices or whatever. Somebody was saying a good way to... Sometimes I count backward from 4,539, just to get my mind. But sometimes I just sing, and I've been singing that 525,600 minutes. You've been talking about music. It's from Rent, and it's just a wonderful song, A Year in the Life. The other thing you can do with voices, I remember, just put me on the do not call list. Just I don't want, I don't want to be on it. Not right now.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if sometimes I get people that have just crossed over, and sometimes that's fine with me. I don't care. I can, help them find their way to the light.
You're telling them not now.
Yeah, and then, but sometimes it's like, take me off the do not call, put me on the do not call list so that, because I'm busy right now. Yeah, I need some rest or whatever.
Right.
Just a couple of things. There's this book called Opening to Channel. It's how to connect with your guide. And because the way I channel, I'm clairaudient, clairvoyance. So I hear and I see. Clair means clear. So I'm clear seer, clear hearer.
Right.
So that's one of the things. The other one I just wanted to bring up is embracing your inner critic. So, we're only doing a half-hour show, and, they've written books on it. So we're just scratching the surface, but at least you can know. Another, I think, we talked about people that have passed over.
Yeah.
And James Van Praagh was my first introduction to really mediums, and he wrote this Talking to Heaven.
Yeah.
And I went and actually saw him once, and it was amazing that he could bring through these different people that had passed over and know things that nobody else could know about.
Right,
and
different voices.
Different voices, and
Yeah.
Another synchronicity that happened to me when we were talking about doing this, besides Whoopi, was Long Island medium Teresa Caputo was on.
Right.
So that was another one, and then there's Maureen Hancock, the medium next door. She lives south of Boston, so that's another kind of a resource. And one thing that's good about...
Well, we're about 1 minute left with the show, so I'm going to have to sort of interject here, because I want to leave, in completing the show today.
Right.
Very important to listen, decipher, seek out outside advice that you trust, decide if action is necessary. When you're hearing voices, sometimes it's best just to sit and hold the light for yourself and those around you. Not always is it necessary to act. So, and I do want to say that Wendy is a spirit channeler. I am an astrologer, astrological counselor, and a shamanic practitioner. So there is many different avenues of assistance and help that you can get. Your doctor, certainly very important. So anyway, I do want to say thank you for tuning in to Turn to the Stars. Thank you, Wendy, for being a guest on Turn to the Stars.
You're welcome.
And we want to wish you all a really great week and let you know that remember where you've been, because it's so important toward where you're going. And we'll wish you a great week, and we'll see you next week on Turn to the Stars. Take care.